Let's do it, folks. The antidote to corporate media. Hello, I'm Lee Camp. This is Dangerous Ideas. Thanks for joining me. Why am I showing this video again of the Baltimore Bridge collapsing? Why rub it in, Lee? Why keep rubbing it in? I mean, it really is a representation of the U.S. empire at this point. I think they should just play it on loop behind the White House spokesperson. She should never mention it. Just go up there, just looping behind her, say, this is where America's at. I'm playing it again because I have new information today, just come out today, of the cause of this bridge. And it is shocking and not shocking at the same time. You'll see what I mean in just a few minutes. The cause of this massive collapse that killed 6 or 7 workers, I believe. And the revelations about what caused it are shocking and not shocking at the same time. They're not shocking if you understand how capitalism works. They're not shocking if you understand at what point the U.S. empire is. It is not shocking, but in certain ways it's shocking. So I'll be getting to that. I also later in the show at about 3:30, you guys are watching this in different time zones. That's how time zones work. So you're like, we don't know what that means. In about half an hour, I'll be talking to Jen Perlman, who is running for Congress against the always evil, always lovely Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So I'll be talking with Jen about Israel's special genocide operation and many other things, and about the DNC, the Debbie Wasserman machine. I'll be chatting with her about that. But I also have a lot of updates about what is going on in Israel. New updates. You have the continued falling apart of the lies of October 7th. One of the main liars who has led the thrust of the propaganda stories. It's always good to be the tip of the spear for the propaganda. He has admitted in an interview that at least one of the things he said was essentially a lie. So that's come out. I have news on a top Israeli general saying the war in Gaza is completely lost and aimless. Of course, I think it's not that it's aimless; it's that it's genocide. They don't actually care about Hamas that much, and they don't care about the hostages. So anyway, we'll be getting to all of that. But like I said, we're going to start off with this shocking revelations about the bridge collapse, about the collapse of U.S. infrastructure. Please take a moment, folks, to click thumbs up and share, and let your friends and your enemies, especially let your enemies, know that this is where you get your antidote to our always garbage corporate media. Please let them know. So there's multiple causes to this collapse of this bridge, to what happened on the barge, that the container ship that hit the bridge, that caused the bridge to collapse. And some of those are coming out. But let's start with this one from The Lever, which, yes, sounds like a cleaning product. I always think that's good when you're starting a new media outlet. David Sirota, not to name names, David Sirota, name your outlet after a cleaning product. Very important. Anyway, the feds had recently hit the cargo giant who owns the ship and runs the ship, the cargo giant in Baltimore disaster, for silencing whistleblowers. And not that it matters, folks, but I am in Baltimore. So this is my hometown where we see this horrific collapse. The company that so before I get into the details, I just want to say, when I said this is shocking and not shocking, and when I first saw that bridge collapse, if you know enough about capitalism, if you know enough about a waning empire, if you know enough about the corruption within the regulatory system of our government, of our infrastructure, if you know enough about that, you go, I bet you at the heart of this, there is something about putting profit over all else. There is something about not caring if shit is safe and just wanting to get as rich as possible. I bet you somewhere in there we'll find it. And you don't always have the proof. So when I see the images, and when I brought it to you a couple of days ago when it first happened, I didn't go, this is clearly the fault of capitalism. But you can kind of know that that's, you got to find something. You got to find something in there eventually, you know? It's kind of like having sex with a person you don't know in a back alley. You got to find some kind of STI, not STD. These are not diseases, they're illnesses. You'll get over it. It's fine. Rub something on it. You'll be better tomorrow. So the company that that chartered the cargo, sorry, I'm a little surly today. Chartered the cargo ship that destroyed the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Oh, should I give you my tangent on Francis Scott Key? So you guys know he wrote the Star Spangled Banner. Did you know that there are, is it one or two verses? There are verses of the Star Spangled Banner that we do not sing. The American, for those of you in other countries, the American anthem that we do not sing because it's basically about murdering slaves who got away. Or it's about slaves that get away and fight for the opposing side. Because if you were an escaped slave and you were like, the Americans enslaved me, I probably want to fight for the other side, the British. That would make sense. And so there's a verse. If you can Google it, lost verse. I'm not going to read it right now, but lost verse of Star Spangled Banner, where he basically says, if you escaped slavery and you're fighting for the other side, we will murder you and you won't be able to get away. Which, you know, is a lovely thing to have in your national anthem. Yeah, let's murder all those slaves. Anyway, so we have a whole bridge. There's a lot of things in this town of Baltimore, because this is where he wrote the song. A lot of things in this town of Baltimore where we named after Francis Scott Key. Also, the beat or whatever of the boy, I know so little about music of the song. The actual music of the song, not the lyrics, is apparently an old British drinking song, I believe. So he didn't even come up with that. Anyway, Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore was recently sanctioned by regulators, not the bridge, the cargo ship company, for blocking its employees from directly reporting safety concerns to the U.S. Coast Guard in violation of a seaman whistleblower protection law, according to regulatory filings. I'm going to do everything I can through this segment to not make a seaman joke, okay? That's going to be I just want you to know that fight, I'll be having that fight in real time. 8 months before a Maersk Line limited chartered cargo ship crashed into the Baltimore Bridge, likely killing 6 people and injuring others. It did kill 6 people. They've been underwater for the past 3 days, so I don't think they're going to find any guys just hanging out down there. The Labor Department sanctioned the shipping conglomerate for retaliating against an employee who reported unsafe working conditions aboard a Maersk-operated boat. So for those of you who haven't been paying attention to the details of this, the boat lost power before it hit the bridge. So you have 2 things going on. One is, why does a bridge go down immediately when a ship hits it? That seems a little odd. But beyond that, why did the boat hit the ship? It hit the ship. Why did the boat hit the bridge? It hit it because it lost power. Why did it lose power? We don't quite know yet, but we know that company was telling anybody who's a whistleblower, telling anyone who has problems with safety, telling anyone who says that, things aren't right on board. They're telling them, don't you dare go to the Coast Guard. Don't you go to regulators. Don't you talk to anyone outside of the company. You come to us. And that is the only way that we will allow you to work here. But here's the thing. When they actually did that and come to managers about various problems on board, they're fired, which is also illegal. In its order, the department found that Maersk had a policy that requires employees to first report their concerns to Maersk, which sounds like you're choking on something, prior to reporting it to the Coast Guard or other authorities. Federal regulators called the policy repugnant and a reprehensible and an egregious violation of the rights of employees, which chills them from contacting the Coast Guard or other authorities without contacting the company first. Maersk's reporting policy was approved by company executives. So what does this have to do with capitalism, you may ask? Some of you already know. Well, this is the gravity of capitalism. The companies take over the regulators. They take over. They do everything they can to stop workers from doing anything that could harm profits, that could get in the way. They don't care about life. They don't care about whether these workers end up dying on a ship, because if it's going to be an expensive repair, it's much more profitable to have a boat that isn't running well, that could kill people at any time, and just keep that going. Because what are you going to lose? Lose a few workers? Well, life means nothing under capitalism. There's no innate dollar amount on a human life. So, but there's plenty of money on keeping those ships running. So that's how capitalism works. It doesn't care about life or safety or any of those things. Officials ordered the company to reinstate the employee and pay over $700,000 in damages and back wages. They also demanded that Maersk revise its policy to allow seamen not going to do it to contact the Coast Guard about safety concerns before notifying the company. The fired employee was a chief mate on the Saf Marine Mafati, a Maersk operated vessel. The seaman reported unrepaired leaks, unpermitted alcohol consumption on board, inoperable lifeboats, faulty emergency fire suppression equipment, and other issues. What do you want to bet we find out that some fire broke out, burned the electrical system, and then the ship crashed into the bridge because it had a fire it couldn't put out because it had faulty emergency fire suppression equipment, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying it'll be exactly that, but I won't be surprised if whatever we find out knocked out the power of this entire ship. It's rare for the entire power system and any kind of, obviously, with a ship like that, you don't have brakes. You can't just pump the brakes. You have to put the engines in reverse. That's how those ships slow down. This lost all of that power to put it in reverse at all. And so systems like that to go down, it's got to be something extreme. And I wouldn't at all be surprised if it's a problem that they knew about for a while. Before he was fired, the employee was disciplined for not properly maintaining the logbook and failing to properly follow orders. Right. That's an excuse they made to fire him because they didn't like that he was a whistleblower. The fired employee told federal regulators that he believed these disciplinary actions were retaliation for reporting the problems. Okay, so there's one aspect of how you see that the economic system in which we live, the regulatory system in which we live, allows for these horrific accidents. But there's more. And this has more to do with the U.S. empire, which, of course, is inextricably linked with unfettered capitalist destruction of our world, or at least not negligence of our world. Okay, so you've got, those are the faults with the boat. Then you've got the bridge. Why, when a ship hits a bridge going 9 miles an hour, apparently, does it take down the entire massive structure? You'd think when these bridges are built, they think, hey, could something bump into it one day? Could a whoopsie happen and something bump it? I mean, we're very lucky that it happened at 1 a.m. If that had happened at a regular hour, there would have been, who knows, 1,000 people in the water. Who knows how many dead due to the freezing cold waters, etc. But they're very lucky that it was the middle of the night and that it was just a few workers. Now, of course, I'm not saying we shouldn't feel that is a tragedy, that those workers died for this. And many people have pointed out that they were immigrant workers that are given the most dangerous jobs. I think that is a fine point to make. But why did the bridge collapse so easily? Well, this blew my mind, this image. For those of you that can see this image, that tiny little speck next to where, and for those listening to the podcast, I'll try and describe it, but a tiny little speck next to the number 1972. That's the year this bridge was built. And the speck next to it is the size of the average container ship. That little tiny, that was the size of the average container ship. By 2005, the average container ship was this size, about, 10 times the size. Let's see, it used to be 2,950 TEU. What is that, tonnage? Can somebody tell me what TEU stands for? Anyway, it was 2,900 in 1972. By 2005, it was 10,000 plus TEU. That's a lot of TEUs. I'm going to pretend like I know what TEU stands for. Tonnage, something. Anyway, that was the average by 2005. In 2021, and that was also apparently the size of the ship that hit the bridge. By 2021, we're over 24,000 TEU. This thing is like 50 times the size of the average ship in 1972. So the amount that they were So the amount that they were like the size of the ship that they were expecting, if it were to hit the bridge, was tiny in 1972 and nowadays is massive. But there's more because, yeah, bridges might not have been built to deal with these kind of ships, but you can add things, surprise, surprise, to the bridges to protect them from these gigantic ships if this type of disaster happens. And as this article in Politico, by the way, Politico garbage outlet that has spends their days trashing people like me. So don't go read them. But anyway, they say the collapse of Baltimore's bridge Tuesday after the collision could have been mitigated with simple fenders that have been a standard issue on new bridges since the 1990s. Now, of course, this is not the type of fender you're picturing. This is not a guitar. No, this is not the bumper on your car. These are massive, massive steel operations, steel things that are put in around the trestles, around the pillars of bridges to protect them from just this type of thing. Now, these were standard on new bridges since the 1990s. And you may go, well, this bridge was built before 1990. So so clearly it would not have one of those. Well, a lot of areas of the country thought, you know what? Let's add those to our bridges so lots of people don't die. How about that? And if you were not putting money over life, if you were taking your society and building it in such a way that were positive for life and for protection and for people, you would do that. But if you're a city where you're just like, let's dump loads more money into policing and into garbage and to paying lawmakers and to paying bribes, if you're that kind of city, then you don't do this. You don't add these fenders, even if the bridge was built after the 1990s. To continue from the article, today, these fenders are standard to be installed around supporting beams for new bridges to help blunt the potential impact from cargo ships. They help combat the ever-increasing size of ships, just like the 1,000-foot-long Dali. That was the name of the ship. Had the Key Bridge been designed for the criteria that were developed in the 1990s, I think it would have survived the event, they said. In 1970s, when the Key Bridge was designed, ships were dramatically smaller. Already went over that. Let's see. So there was a similar bridge collapse in Florida where a ship was blown off course in a storm, hit a bridge, collapsed the bridge, and they said, you know what? We need to make sure this doesn't happen again. And so we're going to put these fenders around these bridge pillars to make sure this shit doesn't happen again. But here's the thing. Here in Baltimore, they couldn't have known to do that because that similar accident only happened in 1980. In 1980, we saw this exact thing happen. And a lot of places around the country said, oh, well, we're going to start putting in bigger fenders to stop this from happening. Here in Baltimore, apparently, they thought, screw it. Let's just take our chances, even though this is one of the most active ports in the world. By the way, some good news from this. Something like 20% of all coal exports out of the United States go out of this port. And right now they can't leave. So if any activists are thinking of crashing a barge into crashing a shipping container into a bridge, it might slow coal exports. So that accident occurred in 1980. This is from someone, Florida attorney, and he said, so what I'm saying is they didn't learn, and and for 44 years. I'm not saying they should have rebuilt their whole bridge, but they certainly should have taken safety measures. In 1994, the group that sets the standards for road and bridge construction, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, their business card must have like an extension thing they pull out, issued new regulations requiring devices like fenders wherever bridges are not designed to resist vessel collision forces. Boy. And, you know, when you first see an accident like this, everyone goes, well, there's nothing we could have done to stop that. Yeah, there fucking was. Some states have begun to retrofit all their bridges with fenders. But again, this comes back to a few things. One is the amount of money that needs to be spent to retrofit these bridges. We'll be retrofitting the bridges to retrofit these bridges. And cities and towns don't want to spend it because this is the United States. We don't spend money on infrastructure. We have 55 to 60,000. You heard that number right. Structurally deficient bridges across this country, meaning bridges that are not doing well. Some of them could collapse at any time. And the United States, which spends $1 trillion a year on military, won't spend the money to make our bridges not folly downy. Like, how egregious is that? I've often said that the base level of a society, of whether a society cares at all, is successful at all, is anything, is whether it creates the infrastructure for its people where they're not drinking poisonous water and they're not driving across bridges that are collapsing. Like that's just base level, step one of a society. And of course, I'm throwing that accusation at all of our lawmakers, but of course, it goes deeper than that. It is systemic. This is how the system works. The system puts money over all else. The system rises psychopaths to the top where they make the decisions. If you are not incredibly wealthy, let's remember that the two people that spend the most on any election win the election 100% of the time. There is no time where a third person that spent less than the other two wins the election. Zero federally. And the person that spends the most wins the election 90% of the time in the House and over 80% of the time in the Senate. So this is a money bought system, and it does not care. It cares very little about human life. And where it cares about human life, it's usually like the exception that proves the rule, or a happy accident, a happy side effect that a company realized they could make some money by creating safety dividers on highways or something. It's usually like a side effect, like a lucky side effect. Or a company realized that they could make some money by putting out a type of food that had less pesticides in it or fewer chemicals. And so they make money doing that. That's not because this system rewards health. It's because someone realized they could make a buck from making something safer or healthier. It's a happy coincidence that things sometimes get better for the people. It's all systemic. Okay, well, I got so many stories to bring you, so I'm going to move along. And I just want to point out that, you come to me for the stuff, the antidote of the corporate media, the stuff the corporate media, the mainstream media won't bring you. They may bring you both of those stories about the ship size and about, et cetera. They are not going to bring you the deeper levels. They're not going to bring you the system level changes that need to happen to make this shit not happen. They generally are not. Okay, let's get to, this is day 174 of Israel's special genocide operation, and we're seeing more and more people call it a genocide. Even Joe Rogan apparently has finally declared it a genocide. Even Alex Jones has said that Israel is going too far and mass murdering people. Who would have thought you'd ever get him on the side saying that? We are seeing just a mass change in, let's see, I also have some numbers of the nation as a whole, I think, wherever it is. Oh, maybe I don't have it up here. Okay, well, I'll bring it to you tomorrow if I don't. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay. The nation as a whole is shifting on Israel, and this is in a nation that is just swamped with propaganda, pro-Israel propaganda, and still the majority of the U.S. now disapproves of Israeli action in Gaza. That is a huge shift, even in a world of propaganda, a tsunami of pro-Israel propaganda. They just can't cover it up anymore. And thank you guys for what you've done, relaying this to people, sharing videos, sharing information, and all of that has played a big impact on the fact that this propaganda on the mainstream media just cannot sustain. Here's the latest. This is coming from, I believe it's a Gallup poll, and Americans have shifted to disapproval of Israeli military action in Gaza. Percent who approve in November was 50%. It is now 36%. A super majority of Americans disapprove of what the Israeli military is doing. And again, I know that doesn't, like, it should be 100%. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're facing the kind of propaganda that Americans face, and I was about to say, let's face it, that's too many faces. Too many faces in that sentence. Let's take a look at it. When you're facing that much propaganda, like most Americans still believe the mainstream media. They still think the mainstream media is often bringing them the truth. And even that is not enough to keep them approving of Israel's actions. Opinions of Israeli military action in Gaza by attention paid to news. Following the news very closely, 43% approve. And again, this actually shows how horrible our mainstream media is. For the people who actually pay attention to the news, meaning watch our mainstream media, that is the highest number who approve of Israel's military, Israel's genocide, 43%. If you follow less closely, meaning you're not sitting there on mainstream media, then it's 37% approve of Israel's genocide. And if you're not following mainstream media hardly at all, then it's 27% approve of Israel's genocide. So, this is good news in terms of American states in the betting. This is also awful. This is such an indictment of the mainstream media. Like, the fact that if you watch our media, you think a genocide is okay. Like, more people think a genocide is a breathtaking indictment of our mainstream media. And, they're, of course, covering that a lot of outlets are covering that these numbers have changed. But, of course, they're not covering what this says about mainstream media. Republicans retain a positive stance of this genocide. Independents have turned negative on it. Changes in views of Israeli military action in Gaza by party ID. So Republicans in November, 71% were still endorsing genocide because many Republicans are, let's face it, straight up racist, like full frontal racist. And therefore they do not mind and they are not bothered by the mass murder of people who are not white. But now it's down to 64% of Republicans, little decrease. Independents, it was 47% in November. Now it's down to 29%. Democrats, it was 36%. Democrats are more systemic racism than full frontal racism. It's a little bit of difference there, a little bit of nuance in their racist views. And I know there's some exceptions in the Democrats. We're about to talk to one in a moment. Jen Perlman's running as a Democrat against the always evil, always lovely Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Democrats, 36% in November approved this genocide, and now it is down to 18% of Democrats approve of this ongoing genocide in Gaza. Another story of how the propaganda is collapsing, the lies are collapsing around this genocide action. One of the biggest, and actually, before I tell you this, can you please share this, everybody? But if you want to throw in some super chats, it really does help the show. And I know, tens of thousands of you watch this after it's live, and many of you used to not be able to get involved in super chats, but now you can. If you're on YouTube, you can click the thanks button and throw in a couple of bucks or whatever you can spare to help keep this show on the rails, and it'll help pay this team of producers and lighting people and camera people. I got to pay their salary. I'm kidding. There's no one else. It's no one. There's no one. But I wish there was a producer I could just yell at. Why the hell did you put? I'm going to start pretending there is. And secretly, it'll be me yelling at me. But anyway, so throw in a super chat. Love the super chats. All right. And you can also do super chats on Rumble as well, which in about 20 minutes, we'll be going to just rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as my locals page. But one of the main sources of the most horrific lies about what happened on October 7th, and let me just preface this by saying, it's not like I endorse hostage taking or murdering people or anything like that. But I have brought to you all of the details, and they're coming day by day, of how many of the killings on October 7th were done by the IDF. A ton of them, like a ton, because Hamas's goal was to take hostages, not to just murder people. And then the IDF came in and just started murdering everyone. I brought you just mountains of evidence showing that. But also, we've seen that a lot of the, or maybe all of the most egregious things that we heard about October 7th that were repeated by our lying faced liars of government have been proven completely false. The systematic mass rape has completely been debunked and has collapsed. The beheading babies was completely debunked and has collapsed. The mass murder of babies has been debunked and has collapsed. The babies put in ovens and all this crazy shit has been debunked. And here is one of the main sources of a lot of these stories about executing children. This is the guy who said he saw piles of executed children. These lies have been outed, and he has even partially, not fully, but partially admitted that some of these are lies. The Jewish extremist responsible for concocting some of Israel's worst atrocity propaganda about October 7th has admitted that at least one of his stories about Hamas executing children was untrue. Yossi Landau of the group Zaka, and I'm going to make more fun of Zaka in a few moments, bring you some of the truth of Zaka. Yes, Kim, getting the super chat started. Love you, Kim. Damn straight, Kim. That's what I'm talking about. I don't have excess anger. I don't know what I don't have anger issues. Wait, I don't know what you're talking about. But Zaka is this so-called paramedic group, emergency responder group that does nothing but propaganda, and they're not actually emergency responders. More on that in a moment. But anyway, he's one of the key people in Zaka. And he concedes in a new interview with Al Jazeera's investigative unit that dead bodies he previously claimed to have seen in Kibbutz Be'eri were, quote, not children. So he ran around for months now doing interview after interview, all the interviews he could, saying he saw piles of murdered children. And hold on one second. Let me just check in if Jen Perlman is coming to the show. Anyway, piles of dead children. And now in this interview, they confronted him with the fact that there were not that many children killed at this kibbutz. Like, not, I mean, it's all gross. It's all gruesome. It's all a tragedy. But let's know the truth. We should have the truth, tragic or not. And so he said in the interview, he then admits, because he's told there weren't that many children there. He says, quote, when you look at them and they're burned, you don't actually know their exact ages. We're talking about 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds. You just don't look on the spot to see the ages or something like that. So he's saying this was a group of a pile of possibly adults and everything, but also in terms of the burning of so many humans, we know now that a lot of that was IDF shelling. And again, it's all gruesome. It's all horrific. But so he has admitted at least one of these things is lies. Other aspects of what he's talking about have been debunked as well. And he was involved in many of the most disgusting stories, the 40 beheaded babies that even the White House had to walk back after Biden said that. Said he saw video of it. And then later the White House said, yeah, we've never seen any evidence of it at all. So many of these stories have collapsed. And yet this was the guy that led around Pramila Patten, the UN official who was writing a report. She admits she was not allowed to investigate. So she just took the word of Israeli government officials. But then I also wanted to bring you this real quick. About exactly what Zaka is. Zaka's male-only volunteers are not medically trained have no professional qualifications and completely lack medical expertise. So you have this group of people saying they are these first responders and creating all of these lies about what happened, and then they're not even first responders. They're not even trained to be first responders. It's totally ridiculous. Uh and the other thing is they were pivotal in the removal of all the bodies before actual evidence could be taken, before people could come and see what actually had happened. They say they do it um, to to be in line with Orthodox Jewish customs, but it also means that that all forensic evidence is taken away. There's no autopsies. There's nothing that could prove what actually happened. And people have found that very frustrating, but that seems to be their job. That seems to be what they did. So anyway, at least part of he is at least admitted that part of his story was made up, and much of his other stories have been completely debunked. So, moving on to our awesome guest. I want to get to that. Please, everyone, hit share, hit subscribe, hit thumbs up, all those good things. When you hit subscribe, you have to hit the bell icon so you can maybe get an alert. But I do these live streams 4 days a week, and you often will not get alerts about them because of the suppression. So just show up 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And in about 15 minutes, we'll be going over to Rumble. But it's all free to watch there, rumble.com/Lee Camp, and it will continue there. But anyway, let me bring in a friend and a hardworking journalist and activist, and she will not give up on her quest to unseat Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Please welcome Jen Perlman.
Hi, I'm so sorry I'm a little late. I was having a studio disaster, which is now why I'm in my house. So,
That's okay.
Thank you for having me on.
That's okay. I always, whenever someone's like a minute late, I always assume it's a time zone thing. And they're like, I thought it was going to be 7 p.m. or what, like, that's what I just immediately assume. Anyway.
No, it's all good. Normally I'd be in a studio with a better situation. It's all good. And I am not a journalist. I went to journalism.
So here's the thing. I'm calling you a journalist because you do so many excellent live streams and stuff. But yeah.
Thank you. Well, I play one on TV. No, we have on people. I like to say I'm a journalist facilitator and invite people on to share with people what is truth versus people that have to turn on it. I can't watch the TV. Like the only way I even know what they're saying is from people like you and other people that cover what they're saying. Because otherwise I wouldn't know.
Well, and you just a minute ago, you weren't on yet, but I was covering this. Let's see, new information. Oh, I might have already X'd out of it. But anyway, new Gallup poll showing that Americans, a super majority of Americans say Israel's military has gone too far at minimum. And what does that have to do with the media? Well, it shows that those who have kept most in touch with the news, have followed the news the most, are most likely to feel that Israel is doing correct as they commit genocide. So it really is an indictment of our mainstream media, because those who are most informed, meaning mainstream media, are most likely to think this genocide is fine.
Well, they have the same corporate donors. I mean, why would we expect our media to act any different than our Congress people, than anybody that is on the same payroll for the same donors? It's, I mean, once you see it, I don't know how people can unsee it. Because to me, when I look at what's going on, it's like all I'm seeing are like ads for Raytheon and Boeing. And like, I feel like our entire existence now is just one giant commercial foray into violence.
It is true. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't dumb yourself back down. And I try. I like 15 drinks a night. I try and get myself back to that dumb, but can't do it. But yeah, you mentioned the Raytheon and the weapons contractors. I always make the point that why do you think Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and General Dynamics advertise on CNN and Fox News? Is it because they think a grandmother in Poughkeepsie is going to buy a heat-seeking missile? Or is it because they want to own those networks?
I mean, that's what it is. But, now I feel like once you see capital, you see it everywhere. right? Like you see it everywhere. I remember growing up as a kid going to football games. I'm a Dolphins fan, and we're finally having a team, so I'm happy about that. But now I don't go to the games anymore. I watch them on TV, but the complete entwinement between the military industrial complex and the NFL, it's grotesque. And I mean, granted, we had other disgusting. We used to have actually a porpoise, a live
Now
porpoise.
they can actually CGI replace the players' faces with like a Jimmy John's ad, right?
Well, they might as well all just be. Well, I've been saying this about Congress forever. I wish Congress people dressed like NASCAR drivers.
That's true.
It would be really
nice.
funny. I mean, you'd have like basically only like a handful of people that are just wearing regular clothes.
Yeah. No, they'd be very few. They'd be covered in it. Covered in labels for their corporate sponsors. So tell me about your race. Tell me about how wonderful Debbie Wasserman Schultz is. Most people, some people I think we're now getting far enough away from like 2016 that there are probably people that just woke up to the reality a year ago and don't really recall who she is or what she's done.
Yeah. Well, and I generally I don't like harping on her because I feel like I have enough that I could say this is what I am for. So let me preface this with that, but just to give people a history. Debbie has been our congressperson for 20 years. This would be her like 21st and 22nd years. And she, before that, was in the State House until she termed out of there. So she's been a fixture right out of school, actually. She came right out of grad school and went right into the Florida legislature. So she's been a fixture here for years. And she takes corporate money from the most nefarious sources. So it isn't just that it's corporate money. It's everything from fracking to the military industrial complex. She used to specifically take from for-profit prison industry, but got busted with that. So now apparently doesn't, although I bet if you followed some of the law firm rabbit trails, you'd probably still find the for-profit prison industry, payday lenders. I mean, anybody you could think of. She was the Democratic Party's #1 insider trader in 22 in Congress. And she just is making money hand over fist. And what's so infuriating is these are our employees. And while they're extremely insubordinate, they are still our employees. So the fact that we're paying her salary.
You're referring to how it's supposedly, ostensibly, they're supposed to represent us.
Well, right. Oh, no. I know they don't represent us. I'm not saying they represent us, but they technically do work for us. Technically, they're on the payroll. But like so we're paying you whatever, 180 grand a year to do your job. But then you're also making all this other money from all these other places. And yet you keep getting to do your job, give yourself a raise, get better health care than everybody else. Claim to be, fall on your breast cancer survivor victimhood over and over and over again, but deny other women the right to health care. Take money from the alcohol industry, which is one of the major causes of breast cancer. And every little thing is just so unbelievably corrupt and nefarious about her. And I wish I could say this was just policy, but we could go there too. She has not met a war she didn't increase the budget for. She increases budgets when they're not even asked to be increased. This was one of the 12 Democrats that voted to censure Rashida Tlaib, which, regardless of your thoughts on that, as somebody who is looking at our employees being insubordinate, I find it absolutely infuriating that they're spending their time censuring each other. Like, what kind of circus is this?
Well, and it's a pretty high bar to be censured in the government, in the Capitol, and they don't do it that often, And the other ones are like woeful. It's like taking bribe money and stuff like that, and then they do it to Rashida Tlaib for basically standing up for Palestinian rights.
Right, and I am so sick and tired of my Congresswoman in particular and how she represents Jewish people. That is, like, for me, particularly painful when I watch her standing on the steps of Congress and saying that if you don't sign this resolution, and this was referring to the resolution that was anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. If you don't sign this revolution, then you don't have a soul. And again, I'll say it, there is no one more an expert on the soul list than Debbie Wasserman Schultz. But I just, like, that is not helping. That is fostering anti-Semitism and Islamophobia simultaneously, that's a talent in and of itself. And I don't want this person representing me for so many reasons, but on policy, We're different on everything, but I support a woman's right to choose. And we both like the LGBTQIA community. Those are the only two things she and I have in common.
Yeah, and many of the things you've already mentioned are some of the key things that are different between you two. And obviously, right now, one of the biggest issues is this ongoing genocide that you have called out so strongly, and that she would ship more bombs to kill children right now if she could. And many people may not remember, but she was pivotal in the we'll call it finagling of the primaries to, keep Bernie Sanders from winning in 2016. She has been just very important at the top of the DNC for it to continue to run in this ridiculous, corrupt way that doesn't represent Americans.
Yeah. And I mean, the war in Gaza right now, I'm not even calling it a war. Okay. The genocide in Gaza. This is, for people, I understand a lot of people, this started October 7th. Whereas for many people, we've been sort of watching this for a long time. And it's been a long road for me. Like, it's taken me like a long time to get to where I am now on it. But at this point, and I just said this recently on our show, there was maybe a 2 to 3 week grace period after October 7th for people to be on the correct side of history. Maybe a 2 to 3 week grace period. Everybody since then, you're too late. Sorry, you're too late. You made your choice when you made your choice. I know who those people are, and there is no coming back. Now, obviously, I want them to stop killing people and send food in. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter what they do. I'm talking politically. Anybody who was not on the right side of this from 2 to 3 weeks in, you're done. We see you. We know who you are. You've accepted this, and you could spin it any way you want. And so, to me, it's a line. It's just a line that I shall not be crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of, you are so different from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, or from what the Democratic Party seems to represent right now in our Congress. Why is it that you call yourself a Democrat?
So I registered as a Democrat when I turned 18 years old back in forever ago. I'm not going to get into that. No need. But when I originally registered as a Democrat, I grew up in a very working class family down here in North Miami Beach. My poppy was a mailman. My grandma worked in a beauty parlor, like very just regular people. And everybody was Democrats. So to me, when I registered, it's like that was the Labor Party. Or, I mean, I didn't call it that, but for lack of a better term, like that was it. And so I've been in it the whole time, with an exception of I did have a protest Dem exit after the Bernie fiasco. But the reality is, I live in a closed primary gerrymandered district. So we are not having a Republican sitting in this seat. We are not having an independent sitting in the seat. The only person that is going to be sitting in this seat is a Democrat. So there is a strategy component. There is no running as a third party here. That's a waste of time. So I understand people do not ideologically agree with Democrats. I don't either. I agree with the principle of what the Democrats are supposed to be, a la FDR. And in that regard, I am reintroducing, again, the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights. I support a federal job guarantee, like old school Democrat. So I kind of look at it like I've always been sort of where they left me. They went somewhere else. Like I don't know where they went. But so I know what we are now. I know that it's not what I want us to be. I am by no means someone they're going to want there. I am by no means someone AIPAC is going to want there. So the Democrats are not going to be my friend. They're just not. And that's fine, because I don't need new friends. But the thing is, I will work with absolutely anybody who is on my mission for any particular issue. And it's by issue. I can work with someone against fracking, even if we don't agree on the abortion issue. I can work with someone getting out. Like, I am so sick of the tribalism. So for me, anybody, and like we always talk about Thomas Massey on our show, because Peter really has a lot of respect for him. And it's one of those people that he doesn't meet with lobbyists, and he doesn't take corporate money. And he's very conservative. I don't agree with him, but I can respect that. So that's somebody then I can work with for whatever those things are. I am tired of the games that these people are playing. So I'm a Democrat because I've always been one, but it is not because I agree with them. But yeah, I think I'd rather have no parties. I like no parties.
Yeah, I hear you. And is this your third run? Is that right?
Second.
Second. Okay. So I assume in the last one you saw how tough it is and how rigged it is by money, et cetera.
Oh yeah.
So do you see some ways to make this time around different?
There's a lot of variables. So I ran in 20, and that was my first time ever running. We didn't know anything. We didn't have a staff. It was my business partner and me just sort of winging it. And we ended up getting close to 30% of a vote, raising $400,000 in a pandemic where we lost about 2 months of canvas time, which for a grassroots campaign is huge. So I actually felt like really proud, and I ran a service campaign. So we were doing service the whole time. So we did like a couple community gardens, we did food distributions. And I do that because that way, if we lose, I'm not wasting my time. And then we transitioned that campaign into our podcast service organization that we're doing. So the difference now, 4 more years of name recognition, 4 more years of me being in this community, canvassing for everything from women's reproductive rights to other candidates, being present at all sorts of different groups, events, being present for people that need support. But also our district lines have changed, which is why I didn't run in 22, because we didn't find out until they save it to the last minute so people can't obviously run viable campaigns. So I didn't bother in 22. But we no longer have any portion of Miami-Dade County in our district. And we used to retain the sliver of the wealthy Jewish portion of Miami-Dade from basically Aventura all the way down to Surfside down the coast was in district, and now it isn't. So we lost, that's a huge blow to her. And what we gained is an area called Miramar, which is very working class, Latino, Haitian, like a lot of Black Islander, and definitely very canvassable. So a lot of things have changed. She is no longer in favor with a whole bunch of municipal people here that she was 4 years ago. Those seats have changed. So a lot of things have happened. So I figure, I know I need 50,000 votes, and not the least of which, Lee, let me tell you, she has angered the Muslim community in a way that I didn't even know. Let me tell you, I was not that familiar. I knew some people through my political connections that were like in like Muslim organizations and groups that political. If I tell you I'm in 7 different WhatsApps, I am like C-3PO with the Ewoks. I have been to so many iftar dinners. I can't even, and the level of organization is impressive.
Nice.
So these are people also that are predominantly registered Democrat and predominantly are not very active in terms of voting in primaries. So these are people that are sort of new, and there are 75,000 Muslims in Broward County, most of whom, if not all of whom, are pretty angry at our congressperson. And I need 50,000 votes to win. So
when is the election, and how can people keep following you?
So our election is August 20th. We have a very late primary. This was done, we strategically launched late as sort of like an ambush situation. We have less than 5 months. Our website is gen2024.org. We also, for people who are not fans of Act Blue, as I am not, you can go on our website and there is a link to donate without going through Act Blue. I do not know what it is. It's some other credit card. I don't know. It's so that Act Blue doesn't get the money. And you can find us. Our social media is Gen for Congress, FOR, Gen for Congress 2024 on Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever. I'm not on, and people, let me preface this, I'm not on social media. Peter handles all my social media. They started being mean to me about 3 years ago, and I said, fuck this. So I don't need that shit. I don't need that mean shit in my headspace. And I think I'm just Jen Perlman on Facebook. But yeah, we need love.
Okay.
We need support.
Cool. Well, I wish you well. Keep up the fight.
Thanks, Lee.
At minimum, scare the hell out of Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Oh, I'm living rent free in that woman's head for the next 5 months.
Nice.
And that pleases me to no end.
I will see you soon.
Bye, Lee.
Bye. All right, Jen Perlman. I got more for you, though. The percentage of Israeli arms that are coming from the United States. It's all coming up. That and much more. All coming up at rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as my locals page, rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to watch there. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. Did I mention what I can't remember, what was the, rumble.com/Lee Camp. Go there for the rest of this show. Free to watch. And if you're not going to make it there, please show up every day. I'm here 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, but you can watch anytime after that, and click the thanks button and throw a couple of dollars to keep this show rolling. All right, give me 1 second. I'm also going to bring you that an Israeli general, high-level general,